What's up, y'all? You're listening to the Extra Point College Football Podcast. I'm your host, Jacob Carnes, joined as always by my co-host, Daniel Hammock. Daniel, week 7 is here. We have reached the midpoint of the season, regular season being 13 weeks with that bye week built in. So we are at the midpoint. It is not hump day. It is hump week in college football. And I think we're starting to see like the season takes shape, right? Like, well, we've reached this halfway point. We've gotten to see every team. The computers have a lot of stats now, like all the advanced stats. They've gotten a lot of like plays to get in there. So we kind of know who teams are at this point. So I think now when we start to see how accurate our picks can be, right? Because now we've seen these teams, we know who they are. We've seen their identity. So I say all that to say now is the time when I catch up and I make my comeback. So I'm coming for you. Watch your back. You know, as we sit here right now, Daniel, you're at 65% against the spread at 32-17 on the season. I'm at 23-26, putting me at 46%. So just know I got you right where I want you.
Yeah. I believe it. It's a very razor thin 9-game lead if you want to just go by the actual standings itself, since we picked the same amount of games. So I thought about sandbagging it and just picking every game the same as you so that I win no matter what, but that doesn't work because I picked first. So
That's right.
You know,
strategy, strategery.
Yeah.
Daniel, we got 7 games we're gonna pick this week. Don't let them tell you it's a light week in college football, because once again,
It's never a light
I sent
week.
over 11 games. So we had to narrow it down as we always do, but we are picking Cincinnati-UCF, Indiana, Michigan State, Arkansas and Auburn, LSU and Florida, which looks a little less exciting after the news this week. Texas and Oklahoma State, Georgia, Kentucky. Who'd have thought? The last 2 undefeated SEC teams, Georgia and Kentucky. And then my personal favorite game of the week, Tennessee and Ole Miss. So those are the 7 games we're going to pick. Daniel, what's a game we're not picking that you're excited to watch?
So I have a rule. I don't pick Friday night games anymore, but I might watch them. So I was thinking about watching Clemson-Syracuse, but then I remembered I've got like literally anything else to do. So probably not going to do that to myself. Thought about watching Missouri take on Texas A&M, probably beat them straight up. But I think the one I'm going to tune into is Pitt versus Virginia Tech, because that is for the Coastal, basically. I mean, that's with how crazy the Coastal has been. These are 2 of the top teams in that division, and the winner has an inside track on finishing out the season as the Coastal representative in the ACC, which has the best chance it's had in the past several years at actually winning the ACC championship. So that's one. You and I joke all the time that we're a Coastal pod. That's one of our favorite divisions in all of sports. The whole, NCAA, everything like that, all of FBS. So give me Pitt and Virginia Tech. Also the Braves. I'll be watching the Braves.
Daniel, that is the Sound the Sirens WTF game of the week, Pitt and Virginia Tech. So that was my I'm gonna start putting those on Twitter. That is my WTF game of the week. Virginia Tech is a 5-point dog at home. I think they win that straight up. So wrong team favored. Sound the Sirens. I think Virginia Tech is a touchdown better than Pitt.
It's a fun quarterback matchup too.
Oh yeah,
Braxton Burmeister has been very solid this year, and then Kenny Pickett's probably having his best year so far.
Dude, he finished third to like Peyton Manning in the '98 Heisman Trophy race, and now here he is at Pitt in 2021. And
Peyton Manning is 97 because they won the championship the year after he left in 98. But yes, otherwise, flawless.
Dude, Kenny Pickett. I just want to park here for 2 seconds. Like, I would legitimately hear an argument that he's been playing for sure one of the best quarterbacks in the country. I would hear an argument for the Heisman at this point. Like, he's been playing that well. Like, his stats are off the charts compared to the fact that we don't have like quarterbacks just popping off this year as we have. We don't have our Joe Burrow this year. We don't have our Mac Jones. Yeah. So, hey, shout out to Kenny Pickett, 27-year senior at Pittsburgh.
Like, if you're going to hear arguments for like Matt Corral, then why not?
Yeah.
Hear an argument for
if it's
Kenny
just
Pickett.
stats. I mean, yeah. And Kenny Pickett hasn't had his bad game against Bama. He hasn't had to play Bama, but he hasn't had his bad game against Bama. So
he had a great game against Georgia Tech. I know that.
And how good is that Tennessee win looking right now for Pitt?
Yeah.
Looking really good.
But that loss to Western Michigan, not so much.
Not so much indeed. So, Daniel, let's dive into our games. All Saturday games this week. We'll start at the top. At noon, Cincinnati and UCF. Cincinnati is a 20.5-point favorite. This line's kind of moved a little bit both ways. I've seen it get to 23. I think it's at 21 now. It came down to 20.5, came down to 20 at one point yesterday. So it's kind of been all over the place. That seems big, but the Bearcats are playing. I mean, AP poll has them at third. So is Cincinnati the third best team in the country? And if so, I guess they should be 20.5-point favorites against UCF, right?
Yeah, I see it. I think that Cincinnati at home playing UCF, this is a game we circled at the beginning of the year, said this is going to be one of those, Gus Malzahn prove it games. It absolutely could be that Gus Malzahn comes out and does something spectacular here as a coaching job. This year's been crazy enough where I wouldn't come in and be, shocked. We've already seen Bama go down to a Texas A&M team that I really don't believe in a whole lot. That being said, without Dylan Gabriel, I mean, this team just lacks that ability to score points at a high clip. And that's what you need when you're going to go against a defense like this with Cincinnati, but really just a complete team. That's the thing with Cincinnati is that offensively, they can throw it, they can run it. Defensively, they can stop the run, they can stop the pass. They've got, the whole quarterback head coach thing is very important at this level. That's why this one was going to be such a fun matchup with having Luke Fickell with Desmond Ridder versus Gus Malzahn and Dylan Gabriel. But now you're, minus one of those four. So it's to me, I think Cincinnati controls this game. I think they're going to play their game the way they want to. I don't see it being close at the end. I think UCF might come out, maybe even score early and maybe take an early lead. Because Gus has been known to throw some special things in there, but I think there's just too much difference with the talent and the. I also the want to. I think that Cincinnati sees the carrot of the CFP, and they are the greatest chance of doing that in the college football playoff era. For a group of 5 team to make it. So I think that this team's focused, like they have a common goal. And when that kind of stuff happens, I think that focus not only is going to drive them to win, but they're going to cover. So give me Cincinnati, lay the points.
I think the captain of the Gus Bus to start the season. And that means I'm not giving up yet. UCF's not going to win this game. It's also never going to seem close. But 20.5, I'll take the points. I think this is a 20-point game, so that hook's important.
That's a very important
That's
hook.
a really important hook. I think UCF's run offense is – I was telling you this before the show. Their EPA or rush is actually first in the country. Like, they have a super successful run game. Now, part of that is because Dylan Gabriel got hurt. And so they've had to run the ball.
Right.
And their pass offense has been atrocious. I think I am worried against a defense like Cincinnati that it's already a one-dimensional offense, in the sense he's going to be able to shut that down pretty easily. But I also think this can be kind of a Super Bowl for UCF. I think Gus Malzahn is used to playing in big games. That he can prep the team and be ready for a big game like this. I think Cincinnati's comfortable with a 17-point victory in a rivalry game.
Yeah.
I'm not anti-Group of Five. I am a little anti-Cincinnati being the third best team in the country because they're absolutely not the third best team in the country. So all those reasons, mainly captain of the Gus Bus, but I will take the points. UCF doesn't win the game. It's not close, but maybe it's a 20-point game and I get the hook. So UCF plus 20.5, I'll take it and run away and hide. And we will go into the Big Ten or Indiana hosting Michigan State. Daniel, I have flip-flopped on this game probably 4 times. I've looked at several different models and people are all over the place on this, but Vegas has set this line at 4.5. Michigan State undefeated. Indiana, the feel-good story of last year coming into this season, not been the feel-good story this season, kind of back to normal for Indiana. But the line being at 4.5, I get that it's at Indiana, but kind of a stinky line.
Yeah, there's something to this. I'm looking up and down these little EPA charts, different things like that. And I mean, everything is pointing to Michigan State. Michigan State has been the better team. They have not turned the ball over. They've been balanced. They've got if you want to call it a Heisman Trophy candidate at running back with Kenneth Walker III. I think that he has been a welcome surprise to this offense. And they're taking that step that we just didn't think they would take this soon. Yeah, they're undefeated. Looking at Indiana, that feel-good story that we had last year has just been gone. I think that, really just looking at these numbers, they're just not playing good ball. Like they shouldn't win this game. They should not win this game. Offensive success rate, 35%. Defensive success rate, 42%. They shouldn't win. They're getting 4.5 points at home, and college football is weird. I think this is the game that Peyton Thorne does turn the ball over. I think that this is his one weird game, and it's at least a close game. I'm taking Indiana with the points, but I wouldn't be surprised if Indiana wins this game because part of this is I do think that it's going to catch up to Michigan State that they haven't had just a stinker so far. This game is their stinker. It's a noon game at Indiana. It's the perfect game for them to go in and show that they're still dominant, but they're not that team yet. I think that they can get to that. I think Mel Tucker is a great coach. I think they are, Jay Johnson, a great offensive coordinator. I think they're moving towards that. I think in a couple of years, once they've recruited and continue to, I think that they definitely can be one of those teams, and they're going to be the toughest out probably in the Big Ten East. But this is the game that they either lose outright or it's just close and Indiana has some sort of lead for a while, and maybe Michigan State has to escape with a field goal or something like that. But I'm taking Indiana in these 4.5 points.
So one model that I look at has Indiana winning straight up. And it is also this model's most confident pick of the week as far as cover probability at 72%, cover probability. Then the other 2 models I've looked at have Michigan State winning by double digits. And so all over the place, it
don't make no sense.
So at that point, I trust my eyes, what I've watched. I'm looking at stats, and the advanced stats kind of speak for themselves. I'm going to lay the points in Michigan State. They have been explosive in the run and pass game. You could argue Kenneth Walker. You could argue best running back in the country at this point, with the way he's played on offense. Indiana's defense has been not great. Super not great, especially against the run. And so I think that Michigan State can come out and play their brand of football and get to 7-0. And if you're looking ahead, that would be setting up for an undefeated Michigan State going up against an undefeated Michigan, which is,
a lot of fun.
Oh, so fun. I mean, trouble with the snap and all. Like, it's just so much fun. So, yeah, I'll leave the points here. I just trust Michigan State from what I've seen. They've really impressed me. They've been one of the stories of college football to this point. A lot of year two coaches with some feel good stories this year. Mel Tucker, definitely one of those. I'll lay the points with Sparty and the Spartans. Let's go down to the SEC. Hey, we have another, if last week was playing for second in the SEC West, maybe this is playing for third. You got Auburn and Arkansas, both schools coming off of losses last week in conference. Auburn losing pretty big to Georgia, 34-10. Arkansas, heartbreaker. I mean, go for 2 and not get it, lose by 1 to Ole Miss. And now here we go. We got Arkansas at home hosting the Tigers from Auburn, noon kickoff. And our point spread, Daniel, is at 3.5. So you going War Eagle or Whoop Pig Suey?
I'm not going to say either one of those. All right, but I do like that. I think that Auburn probably feels, I don't want to say like a hangover necessarily. I think that was a very physical game they played with Georgia last week, but I think there is a sense of I think drain perhaps on the energy level and all of those kinds of things. Losing to Penn State was one thing because it was just, it was on the road. You could kind of explain it away. They're a top 5 team. Losing to Georgia, of course, you can explain it that Georgia was better, but that's tough to sell to your team to say, hey, they came into our house and pushed us around. I think that's going to be an issue. I also think that Auburn gave Georgia gave them their best punch. So I think they did a good job moving the ball up and down the field. They had a couple of turnover on downs that, led to them just not getting any points where they could have maybe gotten 3 points here, 3 points there that may have made it look a little closer, or if they score a touchdown on either one of those. But I say that to say, I think Auburn carries that over into this game, kind of a frustration where they can't really get going. And I think that Arkansas, on the other hand, coming off of a 1-point loss where they had a lead, they go back and forth, go score for score. And basically they came to a point where they said, we're either going to win this game or lose this game. We're not going to kick the extra point. Let's just go for 2. I think they're much more at peace. If that makes sense. I think they're more at peace with how that game ended. And they can kind of, that belief in Sam Pittman's still there, which I think that thread is just so strong. So I'm taking Arkansas. I think Arkansas is just the more physical team. I think they're the better team right now. I just think that they should win this game. And if it's 3.5 points, it's 3.5 points. I'll lay it. I'd like for it to just be 2.5. I think a 3-point win feels nice and snug, just about right. But Arkansas also lost last year, and they don't feel like they should have lost to Auburn after that weird fake spike, or not fake spike, but spike that was a fumble or whatever it was.
Arkansas did beat Auburn last year.
So this in a way could be somewhat of a revenge game. Obviously, new coaching staff, but something to think about. Arkansas, I think, has this game circled and is, understands how the food chain works in the SEC West. And they definitely don't want to be any further than third. So I expect Arkansas to win by 4 or 5 points.
This is another game I've gone back and forth on a ton. So again, those 3 models I look at all have Auburn covering. None have Auburn winning, but all 3 have Auburn covering. But 3, you have to think what's realistic in football. You don't win football games by 2 usually. Like, you win games by 3, win games by 7, by 6. So 2 is an odd number to cover. But I do think about the schedule that Arkansas has gone through to get here. Like, they played A&M, physical game. Georgia, real physical game. Ole Miss last week, a lot of speed. That defense is beat up and tired. They've got to be. I look at a team like Auburn with a quarterback like Bo Nix who has the escapability. I'm thinking, can Arkansas's defensive line, like how much do they need some rest? Because Arkansas is about to play an FCS school, and then a bye week. So like they're about to get the rest they need and recovery they need after these 4 games. But man, like I've gone back and forth with this. I'm still like second guess myself here. I'm going Arkansas. I'm laying the points with Arkansas. I trust Arkansas. I trust what I've seen from Arkansas. I think both have kind of established their identity. I think that what Arkansas does is more sustainable. Again, if you're relying on Bo Nix to make miracle plays to win football games, that doesn't work forever. Auburn has not established the run like I think they should when you've got a talented back like Tank Bigsby.
2 talented backs, man.
They do have 2 talented backs. You're right. And like Auburn special teams haven't been great as far as field position goes. They rank 107th in the country in starting field position. Auburn's their pass offense has not been great. They had a really good game against Georgia last week, but that's kind of Arkansas' specialty. Like they play that umbrella and they're going to dare you to, you're going to have to get these 3 to 5 yard passes up and down the field, like and sustain drives. And I don't think Auburn can do that all game. So I like Arkansas by a touchdown. They're at home. It's a noon kick, 11 a.m. like local time. I just trust where Arkansas is as a program right now. It's, almost a pick 'em for me. So I'll lay the points with Arkansas. 3.5 points. That's, with home field advantage, it's about a pick 'em. I will trust Arkansas at home. Let's hope. That hook's killing me though. Like this could very well be like a 31-28 game and that hook kills you. So let's hope it's 38 or 31-27. And then we get the 4 point in the hook. So
exactly.
All right. We're staying in the SEC. I was going to say we're done with the SEC. We're not. We're super not done. LSU and Florida.
4 SEC games.
Who'd have thought that LSU-Florida would be a noon kickoff coming into the season in Death Valley of all places? So
it's always the 3:30 CBS, man.
Always.
And
sometimes it's the night game. Like a couple years, 2019, they got the late game for Florida. It wasn't on CBS. It was on
actually
ESPN.
last year it was ESPN because that was the shoe.
The shoe. Wow.
Yeah.
I can't believe that happened still. LSU, Florida 10.5 point favorites. And gosh, since they made this line, I mean, it has jumped because several announcements this week of LSU players being out for the season. Eli Ricks, Derek Stingley, Keyshawn Butte. Are those the 3 best players in this roster? I mean,
I think easily.
So 10.5 points. Daniel, does LSU have a chance?
As long as they have to play this game and it's at home.
Mean, I didn't think they had a chance last year.
Yeah, that's really where this comes down to me. So Florida's the better team. Florida's the way better coached team. I think that Florida has an identity. I think Florida should be able to go in there and push them around, especially their offensive line running the ball. I think they should. I really have been impressed with their run blocking. I think that that's Florida's strength. I think the more they lean on that, the better they're going to be. I think they need to, I think that they've done their due diligence with not playing Anthony Richardson a whole lot, let him get healthy, and then also let Emory Jones get confident. But I think it's time to bring him back a little bit and run him some more, because I think that that's going to be big down the stretch of the season for them. He really is that just curveball, that game changer of this offense. Should call him a fastball because he's faster than most. But I just don't know, man. I think that LSU players are, obviously they're starting to quit. You're starting to see these guys leave. But that was also the story last year. I mean, you had Arik Gilbert leave the team halfway through the year. You had Terrace Marshall leave the team halfway through the year before this Florida game. So I thought at that point they're sitting ducks. Florida's just about to come in and whip them. But that did not happen. There was a little bit of help
A shoe was thrown.
The shoe was thrown, and that prolonged a drive and everything like that.
There was
I think
fog
that
in the air.
they take on the personality of their head coach. And I think at that point there was ton of confidence in Ed Ogeron as the head coach because he's coming off the national championship, and he almost gets that, hey, you can have a mulligan season. It's weird, COVID, everything's weird. You had players opt out. You had your best player, Jamar Chase, opt out, and yada, yada, yada. So I think that they kind of made peace with it. They're playing a freshman quarterback. They're playing with house money in the swamp. Now, that's not the case. They're playing at home with a ton of pressure. And I just think that Florida wins this game easily. I think that Florida is able to kind of run away with it. I joke about, not liking Florida or wanting to pick LSU, things like that. I did want to pick LSU because of the stinker last year and how that worked out. I wanted to just take LSU with the points and just kind of run and hide and see what happens because I do think it's weird. But I don't think the team believes in LSU. The one part, I'll leave you with this, the one part I think that could come back, that could be the driving force for LSU to win the game is if this is addition by subtraction. These guys quitting gets that
Made the team better,
negative
like culture
energy
better.
out, makes the culture kind of everybody rowing in one direction. I fear for that one narrative that I'm pushing right there, that it's a little too late. If they would have lost one less game to this point, I think that you could do it. But I think the game last week against Kentucky and just kind of getting beat up by a team that you usually beat up, I just think they're having to look in the mirror, and this is a game that they lose probably. I mean, I only have to 2 touchdowns. It only has to be 2 touchdowns. Like, Florida is a much better team than LSU. I think Florida wins by 3 touchdowns.
Florida's a much better team. This is very easy to me. I mean, this is a top 10 offense in SP plus. They rank EPA margin 24th on offense. I mean, success rates top 25 in the country on offense for Florida. Meanwhile, the opposite of that, LSU's defense has been horrible this year. And the biggest thing for me is they can't get off the field. They cannot get off the field in third down. In third down and fourth down success rate, they rank 121st in the country. LSU does on defense. Like, they cannot get off the field in third down against this kind of offense. Like, if you're not getting any success on first and second down, I don't think Florida's going to have to get into a lot of third downs in this game. But when they do, LSU is pretty much letting everyone walk all over them on third down. And that means drives get extended and points get scored. So I like Florida by 2 touchdowns, at least in this game. I like them to score over 40 points. I don't know if LSU can match that. Their offensive line has not played tremendous this year. Florida's defensive line is playing very well. So I think this is a really bad matchup for LSU with Florida. Again, Florida.
What would you lay it up to? Like, your confidence level with it?
I wouldn't lay it past 14.
Okay.
Like, I think 2 touchdowns is my confidence level.
Okay.
Like 13.5, I'm laying easy. After that, I'm starting to think about it.
Okay.
Like, I think LSU could score 30. It's like 45 to 30 seems like a likely outcome in this game. LSU does have a good offense. Like, they've been able to score points this year. So defense has just been atrocious. So, yeah. So Florida's the better team. I'm not going to overthink this. They should win this easy, going away in Death Valley. So big win for the Gators. Let's go to the Big 12, Texas and Oklahoma State. Oklahoma State, one of the last 2 undefeated teams in the Big 12, coming off a bye week against Texas. Texas, man, losing that heartbreaker to Oklahoma, laying 5.5 points at home. Where are you going with this game?
Yeah, this one, I've been big on Texas all year. I think, obviously, if Caleb Williams doesn't come in that game last week, Texas wins, and, we're kind of talking about them a little bit differently right now. Oklahoma State, they have been solid so far. They've been very good, especially defensively. I've been impressed with just how they've been able to kind of control the game for the most part. I was really impressed with their win versus Baylor. I think that was a very that is a big statement win because I do think Baylor is a tough out. That being said, this game, I think that Bijan Robinson, Casey Thompson are just going to have big offensive days, and I don't know if Oklahoma State is up for scoring with them. I think that they can slow them down for a little bit, but you're not going to keep them in a cage the whole game. This isn't that type of defense. It's a good defense, but they're going to be explosive plays to happen. Sark is going to, scheme guys open like he was doing against Oklahoma, and Oklahoma has talent-wise a better defense than Oklahoma State. They haven't necessarily shown it to this part in the season. I do think that Oklahoma State will probably move the ball a little bit on Texas because Texas doesn't have that great of a defense, but I don't necessarily trust them to take care of the ball, whether it's Spencer Sanders or whoever is playing quarterback during the game. I do think that there are turnovers over the course of the game, but I mean, best player in the game, Bijan Robinson. Like, if I've got to set my hat on one thing, I'm going to do that. And I mean, you're laying 5.5. Do I think they win by a touchdown? Absolutely. That's really what it comes down to. If this was more than a touchdown, that's when I really start to sweat it and say, maybe they keep it a little closer than I think. But if I've only got to lay 5.5 for this, not even a full touchdown, yeah, give me Texas, lay the points. They're at home.
Yeah, Oklahoma State is not great against the run on defense, and you're going up against. I mean, I said Kenneth Walker, but I mean those are your two best backs in the country.
Those are the two best, yeah.
So, I would give the edge to Bijan there, but yeah, Texas. Every time they get the ball, every drive they're scoring 3.5 points. So like, they're getting over a field goal every time they come on the field and touch the ball, and this is including, again, early in the season when Hudson Card was the quarterback and all those 3-and-outs they had against Arkansas and like early on in the season when they weren't putting the ball in the end zone. It's including all of that. This offense has been very different since Casey Thompson took over, and they're getting the ball in the end zone. I think this is a get-right game. They have a chance to prove it against an undefeated squad in the Big 12. And again, put themselves in the driver's seat to get that rematch with Oklahoma in the Big 12 championship. So I'm with you. I think Texas is at least a touchdown better. I think there is a chance they pull away in this game and win by more than that. But I'll lay the 5.5 pretty easy with Texas. Let's go back to the SEC for our last two. So just as we all predicted, the last two undefeated teams in the SEC, the University of Georgia and the University of Kentucky, just as we all predicted. Both schools 6-0, College game day back in Athens for the second time in 3 weeks, which is pretty crazy. Georgia, though, laying 23.5. So once again, big old point spread for a top 15 matchup in Athens. We're going to see more of the Arkansas game, or does Kentucky have a shot?
Yeah, when you and I were kind of looking at the slate, because we like to kind of predict where College game day is going to go. Because I mean,
it's fun.
Every true college football fan loves College game day, and you try to get ahead of it, and you start to look at slates for different weeks, and it's like, oh, hey, if Georgia and Kentucky win, that's probably the game, and it's like, well, they did, and then you start looking around at the other games, and it's like, I mean, they're really going to have
to do a crazy FCS week,
pull something out of a hat. Yeah, go to an FCS, which they've done in the past. I was like, surely they're not going to go back to Georgia for this game, but sure enough, they did. And once they announced it, I was like, well, that's really exciting. Both of them are undefeated. Kentucky's pretty good. Georgia, we think is the best team in the nation. Kentucky's probably going to come in right around that, 8 to 12 range in the rankings from whichever outlet you subscribe to. That's probably about where they're going to fall after this most recent victory against LSU. And then I see the lines come out. It was like started at what, 24.5, 25, something like that. Gets bet down, gets bet up, gets bet down again. So it's dropped a little bit. And it is at that 23.5. So that was kind of surprising. But it just shows the respect that Vegas has for Georgia and what their expectation is of them in this game. I do think that if Kentucky was built a little bit different, then things would be talked about a little bit different. Because I do think that Georgia, while they are the most complete team so far, I do think that kind of Kentucky's strengths kind of play into what Georgia does best. So I am a big believer in Kentucky's offensive line. Like I said on the the reaction podcast we did earlier in the week, I think that they have either the first or second best offensive line in the SEC, and I think that that's important because they're going against the best front seven, front six, whatever you want to call it, in the nation. So that's going to be important for them to just kind of keep Will Levis upright. Wando Robinson's a big deal, but if Levis doesn't have time to throw him the ball, I'm concerned. I think they're going to have to do a lot of quick passes to keep this one close. Running the ball, I think that's their biggest strength, and Georgia's biggest strength to stop it. So I'm really interested to see how that plays out, because I do think they're a great run blocking team. It's not just the backs. So, is Georgia in position to make plays on defense, or is Kentucky, able to block them and get, positive yards, have a high success rate running the ball? On the other side of the ball, I think Kentucky's been opportunistic. They've been solid defense. I do think Georgia's going to be able to move it. One thing we're going to have to ask is, Stetson Bennett has been playing great for Georgia, in as the, kind of interim quarterback, if you will. Some people have even suggested that he should stay at quarterback for the foreseeable future. I think that JT Daniels might be close to available for this game. I think that if you look at Georgia's schedule, they have a bye week and then Florida. I think if Kirby had it his way, he'd be able to rest him for one more week and then the bye week, and then have him come back at Florida in Jacksonville. So I do think we see Stetson Bennett. I think they're comfortable with that after the performances that he's had so far. Stetson Bennett, that is. I just think Georgia's able to move the ball, run the ball. They have a ton of injuries, but that's been the biggest thing so far for Georgia, is that these injuries haven't amounted to them even performing worse. Not forget winning games, but they're still covering. They've covered 5 out of the 6 games this year. They're, against the spread, they're just a good team. That's what the number one, what the number one in team talent composite rankings this year, as far as talent on the roster. Well, that's, these teams that are suffering injuries and they're talking about how it derailed their season. It hasn't derailed Georgia yet because they've had so much talent underneath all that. I do think that Georgia wins. Obviously, I think that they win, but I think that they cover. I think that 23.5, that's a great number. I feel like a 24-point game is right around where this goes, especially after seeing the Auburn game last week and the Arkansas game the week before. I do think it plays out similarly. I think Kentucky gets on the board. I don't think they get shut out. But I think Georgia's in that, 30-something range, and then I think Kentucky is 14 or less. So give me Georgia, lay the points.
Kentucky reminds me of a better UAB as far as style of play. And so as far as like team strength and styles and stuff like that, they're a better UAB, like a way better UAB. But like UAB, Kentucky's strengths on offense play into Georgia's strengths on defense. And if it's strength on strength, I promise you, Georgia's better. like you at your best, you're not scoring on Georgia. The most we've seen is 13. I don't think Kentucky gets to 13 in this game. I think what Auburn got to is more realistic. I think getting to 10 would be impressive for Kentucky. Like I would say, if you try to run the ball, everyone has been talking about the Georgia defense, and it needs to be talked about because, again, through 6 games, it's been historic and has a chance to end that way. Looking at the schedule, right? Florida can score on Georgia, I think, in a couple weeks. We'll get to see that matchup, but I don't think Kentucky can. The run defense is what everyone talks about. EPA is what we've talked about. Every time you drop back to pass, you're losing half a point against Georgia. Every single time you drop back to pass, you're losing half a point. Georgia has gotten pressure on like 60% of all passing snaps against them. It is insane what this pass rush can do. And again, when you're covering, I do think it'll be interesting to watch a team that can actually throw the ball really well against Georgia, because I don't think the secondary has had to be tested, because the defensive line is getting to the quarterback quickly. So the secondary is being told, hey, can you cover for about 3 seconds? Because if so, we're getting to the quarterback. That being said, it's about covering at this point, right? I think Kentucky can score 10. Can Georgia get to 34 like they did last week? I think so. Kentucky's secondary is not great. They have a really good front seven. But again, like the UAB game for Georgia, that's what I kind of look to. Stetson, who also started that game, Stetson Bennett, was able to throw against UAB. You saw some explosive plays. It's looking like Georgia's going to get 2 of their starting wide receivers back this week. That's right. Georgia has not had wide receivers numbers 1, 2, 3, and 5 in their lineup yet. So here comes Jermaine Burton and Marcus Rosemy-Jacksaint back healthy. And I think this is a great game to get ready for that Florida game, get them some reps, get them running some vertical passing routes. I think Stetson will be able to throw the ball against Kentucky this week. And Georgia's going to show, again, why they're the number 1 team in the country. I don't think that's a distraction this week. 3:30, we saw what this crowd did in Athens against Arkansas. I think that's a big factor. I think Georgia jumps on them early and coasts in the second half. Only thing I'm worried about in this game is a backdoor cover. So I like Georgia big. I mean, 35-10 seems pretty likely at this point, which would just get over that cover margin. Let's go to the game of the week, the real game of the week.
The actual game of the week.
It's 2 undefeated SEC teams, and it's a 23.5-point spread. Meanwhile, in Knoxville, Tennessee and Ole Miss a 3-point favorite on the road in Neyland, Checker Neyland. This crowd will be one of the best Tennessee crowds we've seen in years. And that's because the return of Lane Kiffin back in Neyland Stadium as a head coach this time. These are 2 offenses that love to score points. If you love offense, tune in Saturday night, 7:30 on the SEC Network, because this is the game for you. Almost a 3-point favorite on the road. It seemed low to me, but I mean, I've run a lot of numbers. It's going to be close, Daniel. Where are you going with this one?
Before the season, what are we thinking? This is at least a 10-point line?
Before the season?
Yeah.
I think a 10-point line sounds right. I'd lay that pretty easy preseason.
Yeah, I'm just thinking, I mean, that was kind of the thought going in. Hey, Tennessee's not going to be very good. They might be able to score, but Ole Miss, they're going to be pretty good. You know, maybe not elite, but they're going to be pretty good. I think 10 points is about where I felt this game was going to be. Seeing it at 3 made me kind of question things. It's kind of like when we looked at that Indiana-Michigan State line, made me really start to favor the other side. Looked at all the numbers. There's a lot of models out there that are really, juicing up Tennessee +3. Because, especially watching Ole Miss win by 1 this week and realizing they'll be happy to take that 1-point win. I do think that there is an extra level of juice from the crowd that we haven't seen from a Tennessee crowd. It's at night, which is very important. It's that SEC weekend crew, which is just the best. I love that. This will be just a fun watch in general.
Could have had the Manning cast, ESPN.
Yeah, that would be the best. I think. But no, so I just really want to pick Tennessee because of ever since Hendon Hooker took over, Joe Milton made me really question this offense and its fluidity. And, if Heupel was the right guy and then Hooker run it, I'm like, well, they're running the ball at a great clip. They're one of the best rushing teams in the country. And Hendon Hooker's been pretty efficient with the ball. I think that's been very important for them offensively. Now, defensively, that's where you're going to notice a lot of the numbers missing, with what we talked about before the season. They don't have a ton of guys. They get tired towards the end of games. Now, they get up on big leads to, against Mizzou and these other teams that they've played. And it's led to them being, fine at the end of the game. They're able to kind of take the air of the ball and do what they do, play complementary ball. They're not going to be able to do that in this game. I do think it is a track meet. I would take the over, but like you and I were talking about, but that total is over 80 points at this point. So I think I'm going to hang away from that just because that makes me nervous. I do think it's a high-scoring game. In a shootout, normally I would like to take points. It's only 3, though. If it was 3 and a hook, I really would even be like that hook is important to me. But only 3. I do like Ole Miss. I think they are the better team. If you're telling me that Ole Miss wins by a touchdown, I think that's like in my head anyways. That's a very high, over 70% chance in my head that they win by a touchdown. So when I feel that good about it, I'm like, okay, I only have to lay 3 points on the road. I think Lane Kiffin might also, not that he saves anything extra, because I don't think coaches really do that except for Jimbo Fisher against Bama last week. Other than that, I think that coaches really don't save anything crazy, but I do think he's got a little extra incentive to, not be embarrassed by losing to Tennessee after, because those fans want nothing more than Kiffin's blood. But then B, I think that he kind of wants to show that he's a success now where he is. And so it's kind of that pride thing. He's not going to rub it in. I don't think he's going to be good enough to fully rub it in, but I wouldn't be surprised if it's a 14-point game. So, give me Ole Miss.
I'm with you on that. I wanted to pick Tennessee in this game, and I'm not, and I'm picking Ole Miss. The biggest reason is I chose not to pick Tennessee. Like, Ole Miss is going to be plenty of reasons to pick them. I wanted to find a reason to pick Tennessee, and I found some reasons not to pick Tennessee. Let's look at their schedule, Daniel. So they play Bowling Green. All right. Awesome. You win that one. They play Pitt and lose.
Hey,
in the shootout, though.
Bowling Green beat Minnesota. Okay.
Fair. All right. 41-34 to Pitt. Lose by a touchdown there. Tennessee Tech, you beat their 56-0. You play a team with a good offense. 38-14. Now, Florida's a good team on defense, too. So, Florida's a good team. Missouri, you put 62 points on. Missouri's not very good. South Carolina, you put 45 points on. South Carolina's not very good. I think their past 2 performances are kind of skewing the numbers a little bit. Ole Miss is a much better football team. And you want to know who Tennessee plays next week?
It's the 3rd week of October.
It's the 3rd Saturday in October. It's Alabama. So I don't like the odds of them getting up for both of these games. And if you're going to get up for one, you're getting up for Bama, right? Like, is this a look-ahead spot as well? Even though it's prime time and you got Ole Miss coming to town, it's only a 3-point fit. You're only a 3-point dog. It's hard to get up back-to-back weeks. It's just bad timing for Tennessee, I think. I think Ole Miss riding that shootout win, I think that built some confidence. Again, that was their get-back game. We talked about it. Both teams last week in the Arkansas-Ole Miss game needed a get-back game after losing to Alabama and Georgia, respectively, in those games. So Ole Miss won their get-back game. This is where Ole Miss can get back on track. Again, a win's a win's a win in Knoxville at night. I'll lay the 3 points. I'll take Ole Miss by a touchdown like you. This will be a fun game, though. I do think it's closer because Ole Miss does not have a defense still. So I think Tennessee's going to be able to score. I just trust Matt Corral more. I trust Ole Miss's offense more than Tennessee's offense. And I'll hide because the Ole Miss defense is not very good.
Yeah.
So I'll go hide in a corner, and I'll enjoy the shootout knowing I don't have a dog in the fight and just enjoy it as a fan. So a lot more enjoyable when it's not your team in the shootout, right?
Right.
Hey, be sure to follow us on social. I mean, RXPR, you can love it. You can hate it. It is what it is.
Got a lot of haters out there, man. There's a lot of haters, which is fine.
Look,
I love explaining it to people, and it's like, I didn't do this. I did some of it, but I didn't do this.
we have 1/8 control each. So together we control 1/4 of our poll, and the rest is up to God, really. The computer's God. I mean, all of it.
Just everything.
So
everything. So
if you don't like where your team is, I guess God hates your team. I think that's what he's trying to say.
I had somebody reach out saying that they were not happy with the poll last week, which I like people reaching out, but last week they said that it was crazy, but that, that Georgia was number 1 over Alabama. And then this week they were saying it was crazy that Alabama was still number 2 and not further down. So you can't have it both ways. You got to pick a hill to die on. You can't die on 2 hills.
If you want to lay the point, if you want to take Iowa straight up over Alabama, whatever number of money you want to bet, I'll match it. Does not matter to me, because I promise you, they're not beating Bama. They're not. I hope we get that game in the playoff. That'll be a lot of fun. Bama doesn't have their mulligan, so I guess we're gonna have to win the SEC to get that game. Well, Iowa's got to win the Big Ten too, and boy, Ohio State looks good, don't they, Daniel? I'm feeling I'm gaining some confidence back with our Ohio State Georgia national championship pick.
They do have a good stretch here towards the end of the season of some Michigan State, Penn State, Michigan, some teams that have put some W's in the win column. This
is what's fun. Everyone's like, oh my gosh, 5 Big Ten teams in the top 10, and rightfully so. They've been unbelievable. Now they all got to play each other. They've not played each other at all.
Yeah.
So now is when it gets really, really fun. We'll see how good these teams are. So, hey, still a lot of football left to be played, but be sure to follow us at the Extra Point Pod on Facebook and Instagram. Be sure to follow Daniel on Twitter at Deep South Daniel. He'll have his Saturday impressions there. I almost said takeaway. That's my thing. Be sure to follow me on Twitter at Jacob Carnes. I'll have my JK's takeaways. And be sure to follow us there. Follow us along on Saturday as we watch all these games. But that will do it for this edition of the Extra Point. He is Daniel. I am Jacob.